Hello and welcome back to the 100 JavaScript Projects for Beginners series. So in this tutorial, or in this project, we're going to build a JavaScript rock, paper, scissors game. So we're going to need a few tools here. We're going to need functions, variables. We're going to be utilizing some control structures in this project, and then some arithmetic operators, and then the maths random function, as well as other tools and functionality. So again, we'll be utilizing Bootstrap to first build the visuals, and then we're heading to the JavaScript and get this game working. So this is it. This is what we're building. We're going to start here. Let's play. And then you can decide whether you want rock, paper, or scissors. Click on rock, for example, and rock, you play rock. The computer AI plays rock, so it's a draw, and the score stays the same, and so on. And eventually, hopefully you can beat the AI here. But when you get to 10, the first person that gets to 10 is the winner. And you can see here the AI wins. We can play again, see if we can actually win this. Oh, it's impossible. The computer AI is way too intelligent for me. And you can see again, we won. So this is what we're going to build next. So let's head into the Bootstrap first and build the framework. And then we're going to move into the JavaScript and get it all working. Okay, to start this project, head over to Bootstrap, go to the documentation and select the introduction. Here you're going to find a template, a starter template where we can copy and put into our project. So from here, we can get rid of the JavaScript. We don't need those includes there, but we're going to need the CSS here. So we'll keep that there and get rid of the hello world and maybe just change the title. Once you've done that, you're set to start the project. So you can see here, we've got three elements here. We've got the outer element here, the container. So all of these classes here, these are all Bootstrap classes. If you're not familiar with them, just head over to Bootstrap documentation, type them in. But you can see here, we've got the container. The container class is a responsive fixed width container. This is all Bootstrap, text width light Bootstrap. So we're not writing any CSS here. We're just going to use all the CSS that comes with the Bootstrap framework to build this. So what we got an outer set of elements, class container. We're going to have text light and then a margin at the top of 5. We'll then have the inner container, which is the row. We're going to justify all the other sub elements or child elements in this section here in the center. So justify content MD center. And then inside of here, this class element, we've got the width column MD5. So if you change that to 4 or 3 or 2, the size of the column is going to get smaller and smaller, or larger and larger, all the way up to 12, because Bootstrap uses the 12 column framework. And then we've got padding of 3 around this. And then all the text is going to be centered. And then we're going to use a padding top of 5. And then we've got an ID called start game. So this is how we start this project. So next up, we're going to need a heading. So we use the H1 tags. We've got the class of text dark. So the text is going to be dark. We've got font weight bold, and then display 3. So again, these are all Bootstrap classes. Display 3 is going to generate a larger font. And then we got the ID. This is going to be the result section. And then by default, that's going to say, let's play. So that's what we see when we initially open the page. Next up then, we need some text for the verses. So when someone selects, it says rock versus paper or so on. So we can get that information. So again, we've got some different classes here, and we're capitalizing this. And the ID is going to be versus text. And then we have some more text. So this is for showing the score. So human starts off at 0 and computer AI starts at 0. So we've got the ID of player score and AI score. So we're going to need to capture or bind these to JavaScript so we can enter more information inside of here. And then we got some buttons. So this is just a general button. You can see that the class we're using is again a Bootstrap class. And we're going to have 3 buttons, rock, paper, scissors. It's going to be inside of the buttons. And you can see here how we're going to move the data from this button. So when someone clicks on it to the JavaScript, we're going to use onClick here equals, and then we're going to refer to a new function that we're going to build called play game. and we've got this, which represents this element. So a bit further down, we've got a new element here, this div here. And this is going to be for later, so we can just remove this for now. So we're just going to work with this right here and then have a look to see what that looks like. Okay, so far so good. Everything is now in place. So now let's add some functionality to this. So first we need to capture what button has been pressed. And then more specifically, we want to know what the button refers to, either rock, paper, or scissors. So this is the inner text in this element, or these elements. This is the inner text. So what we've done here is when someone presses a button on click, they're taken, or the data is taken to this function here called play game. And we're basically saying this, as in this element, all the data is then being traversed over here to this new function called play game. And what we can do now is, as we've referenced, data is going to be inputted into this function, is we can now extract that data out and then more specifically extract the text content. So if I click on this button here, the information is sent across and I can extract the text rock or paper or scissors. So that's what's going to be stored here inside of this variable called human selection, is either going to be rock, paper, or scissors, the string rock, paper, or scissors. So now we have that data, we now need to work out what the computer AI has selected. So we create a new variable called AI selection here. And now we need to then create a new function called get AI selection, where we're going to work out what the AI has selected, rock, paper, or scissors. The system now moves over to this function, get AI selection. That's what we've called. So here we've called that function. So just remember, we've typed in something, or we selected an input. That input data has gone in here. We've extracted out the text, rock, paper, or scissors, and now it's stored in here. And now we're asking for this new function, and now the function will run. So we create a new variable called options. So this isn't going to change at all. So it's a constant variable, const, and then that's going to be rock, paper, or scissors. So those are the three options that the AI computer can select from. So we now create a new variable called AI selector, and we use options and then maths floor, maths random, and then we times it by the options length. So we times it by generating the length of this, which is 3. So there's 3 items in here, and that's what we need here. So here is just going to generate the number 3. So we're doing maths floor, maths random, and then times the times 3, the options, which there's 3 options. So that's then going to work out whether the AI has selected rock, paper, or scissors. So this here, this calculation is basically going to return rock, paper, or scissors. So let's just see that in a little bit more detail. So what we have here is an array. We've created an array called options. And in that array, we have rock, paper, or scissors. So here, if I remove this, you can see that this variable represents the array and then an item in the array. So the item in the array are referenced 0, 1, and 2. So if I select 0 here, what's going to be stored here is going to be the word rock. If I change this to a 1, then what's going to be stored in AI selector variable is going to be paper, and so on. Number 2 is going to be scissors. So what we're trying to do here is to generate a calculation, a random calculation, which returns the number 1, 2, or 3. And sorry, 0, 1, and 2. So what's going to be left here, like I said, is going to be 0, 1, or 2. And that's then going to select rock, paper, or scissors. So that's how we get the AI selection. We use a random number to generate a number between 0 and 2. And that then is referenced to the array here, 0, 1, or 2. And then that gets returned back into this variable. So like I said, what ends up in this variable is the word rock, paper, or scissors. And then, of course, we can then send that back And now we can make a calculation because now we know what the human is selected and we now know what the AI is selected. So now what we need to do is compare them and generate to see who's actually won or if there's a draw in the game. Let's just have a look at that calculation. So we've got mass floor, mass random, and options length. Okay, so the options length is going to be 3 because there's 3 items, rock, paper, scissors. So we'll just put 3 there. And then we can see the calculation. It's going to be 0. So let's just try that again. So 0 referenced rock. So we got rock again. And then we got now paper. So 1 is paper. So you can see that it's generating this number. Now, let's just have a look if we didn't use mass floor, what would happen or what we would generate. So here we go. Apologies. I went out of the screen there. So let's just try that. And you can see we've got this massive number here, 2.5, blah, blah, blah. So this is why we utilize mass floor, because it returns the largest integer less than or equal to a given number. So in this case, it's going to be 2. It's going to return 2, which is going to be scissors. So hopefully you can see what those two functions do. We have the mass floor. It returns the largest integer less than or equal to the given number. We have mass random to generate a random number between 0 and 1. And then we times it by 3 because there's 3 items. And that will then help us generate 3 numbers, 0, 1, and 2. So back in our code, we're now finished off generating that number and working out what the AI has selected. And now we just return it. So we return the data back here, and then it's stored here. So what we have now in human selection, we have whatever someone's pressed here, which button they pressed, rock, paper, or scissors. That's stored there. And now we've worked out what the computer has selected, rock, paper, or scissors. So now we have that in place. We can now calculate the result between human selection, which is storing rock, paper, or scissors, and the AI selection, which is rock, paper, or scissors. So again, now we're creating a new function to work out what the result is. So now we've created a new function, and that's called calculate results or calc results. We've taken in the 2 inputs, human and AI. So we've taken in what the human has entered and what the AI has entered. So here we've got 2 variables now, human and AI, which represent rock, paper, or scissors and rock, paper, or scissors. And now we need to use some control statements. So first of all, we need to work out whether we have a draw or not. So if human is equal to AI, so if, for example, rock is equal to rock, then the result, the variable result is going to equal draw. And then we just return, which return back to the function where this function was called. So here we're referring to a new variable called result. So what we're going to need to do is create a new variable that's accessible to the whole system. So back up the top here on the first line underneath the first script, I'm just going to create a new variable called result. And initially that's just going to include or it's going to store the word start, the string start. So obviously when we get down to here, we've worked out whether the human and the AI have drawn. So is rock equal to rock and so on. If it is, the result equals draw. So what happens is that the variable up the top there, the information gets removed and replaced by the word draw. Obviously, I can now take that information out of result and put it onto my screen later. Okay, so that's the first if. However, else if, and here's a long check here. So if human equals rock and AI equals scissors, then obviously the human wins. If human equals paper and AI equals rock, well then human wins. If human equals scissors and AI equals paper, then obviously the human wins again. So those are all the win conditions for the human. Now, if the human wins, we need to update the score. So here we have a new variable called human score plus equals 1. So we're going to need to create a new variable to update the score. So back up the top here, just below the result, I'm going to add 2 variables. one called human score and one called AI score. So it starts at 0. Now, if the human wins, then this score then gets replaced by the next number, which is, in this case, 0, and then plus equals 1, so plus 1, and so on. So every time this condition is true, the human score will go up 1. Now, the next thing we do is we embed this if statement. So we nest this if statement here. If human score is equal to 10, so if, for example, the score gets to 10, then the human is 1. Because in this game, we've set it out so that when the score gets to 10, the human wins or the AI wins. So in which case, we then end the game. So we'll do that. This is a new function here. I'm going to create that function in a while. So this will just send the system to this new function and output the end game screen. Like I said, we'll sort that out in a little while. So if, for example, the human score didn't equal 10, if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then the result equals win. So what appears on the screen is the word wins, or whatever we've included to win. And then we return. So this works out whether the human has won. Now, if these conditions here aren't true, then the system will come down here. Because if the human hasn't won, then the AI must have won. So therefore, the AI variable must increase by 1. So the AI score must increase by 1. So the variable at the top here will then increase by 1 to determine or to show that the AI has won the round. Then again, we create this or nest this if statement here. So if the AI score equals 10, then the AI has won the whole game. And then we go to the end game function, and that displays the end result. However, if the AI score isn't 10, then the result equals lose. So that means that the human has lost. So therefore the result is lost. So here the human wins and here the human loses. And then we return back. So that ends this function here called calculate result. We're simply just checking to make sure if the human condition wins. If the human condition doesn't win, then obviously the AI has won that round. And then we nest these if statements to check to see if someone has won the whole game. Because if someone gets to the score of 10, then the game finishes. So we've captured the human input, rock, paper, or scissors. We've then worked out the AI, whether they've selected rock, paper, or scissors. And now we've utilized that information to work out who won that round and whether the game needs to finish. So now what we need to do is output everything. So here we have a document.getElementById, in this case versus text. So here we're referencing this ID up here called versus text. So what we want to do here is put some information. And inside of that, we're going to put human selection plus versus plus AI selection. So we're concatenating this variable with this word, this string here, with this variable. So inside of here, we've captured what the human selected. Remember that this is stored here in this variable. And whatever the AI has selected in this variable is also being printed out here. So these are just being printed out with the versus text. So that outputs to the screen what the human and AI has selected. Now we're going to create a new function called showScore to output all the other data. And here it is. So we'll create a new function called showScore, and we're going to get the elements by ID, player score, AI score, and result. And we're basically just going to take the data from the variables, human score, AI score, and result, and then inject it into the HTML. So player score, AI score, and result by ID. So if we go back to the top in our form, you can see we've got AI score. So that's going to be updated with the AI score. The player score is going to be updated there. And then the other thing is the result. So the ID result is here. So where it used to say let's play, that's now going to show who won that round. It's going to say win, lose, sorry. It's going to determine whether the human has won or lost or drawn that round. So let's just see this in action. Okay, so this is the result. We have let's play to begin with. That gets overwritten, that variable when we click here. So now the variable result equals draw because we both got rock. So no score is incremented. And then eventually someone wins. So we've lost. So therefore the AI wins and the score goes up 1 and so on. So this is going to happen all the way up until 10. The score gets to 10. And now we need to finish this off and create the result function so that the final screen appears when someone reaches 10. So if you remember in the calc result function, we refer to the endgame function when the score, human or AI score, gets to 10. So down the bottom here, we have the function endgame. So here we have a new element called Ellie. And here we put the element by ID start game into this variable here, and then we remove it. So let's have a look to see what this is. So get element by ID start game. So if we go back to our form at the top, you can see that our form here, start game, this is going to be removed. So what we want to do is when someone wins, we want to remove this element here, and then we want to replace it with this element here. So this is the end game screen. So we remove this and then replace it with this. So going back down to the code, down the bottom here, this is where we remove it. So we've removed this element here. Now we need to show our endgame element. So here we change the style display equals block. So an element, a set of divs, for example, it can be hidden or it can be shown. So here we show it by changing the style, the display style, to block. So this is why the new div is going to appear. Now, by default, let's have a look at the top here. Notice that I've added some style, and I referred to the ID endgame, and I've displayed none. So let me just remove that. So if we go back in here, you can see that I can see now both divs. This is the endgame element, and this is the original element here. So first of all, to start the game, I need to remove this from the screen so you can't see it. So I do that by just adding a bit of style here, and then endgame display equals none. And obviously when the game gets to 10, when someone gets to 10, I remove the initial element and then I display block. So I change it from hidden to a block, and therefore it's shown on the screen. So let's just see this in action. There we go. And now obviously we'll try and get to 10. And then when the counter gets to 10, remember it's going to initiate that function, that endgame function. This is going to be removed, and then we're going to see the new element. There we go. And then we've added a button here so that we can just basically go back to the start. Everything gets refreshed. Why does everything get refreshed? How does that happen? Well, if you remember our variables, they start off with 0. So when we refresh the page, these variables go back to 0. So the game starts again. So at any point in time, if we refresh this page, you can see that the variables and everything goes back to the start again. So there we have our JavaScript rock, paper, scissors game. So there's quite a bit to this one for a beginner. And I have tried to, where possible, emphasize on different aspects. And I haven't gone through this particularly line by line. I'd be generating a 4-hour video, but you have got access to the code. So by all means, have a look at the code, become familiar with the flow of the code. Hopefully I've given you an overview of that. So through this, you've learned the idea of functions, or you've got the idea or concepts of functions and how you can use functions to break up your code into smaller parts. So that makes your code more manageable. We've also looked at or utilized a lot of different variables here. So there was 3 types of variables you might have noticed that were used. We used the let type of function, we had a var function, and we had the constant, the const function. So it'd be worth understanding a little bit more about why those were used in certain situations, or particularly or possibly they were used incorrectly in one case. So see if you can find that. So also we used the if else statement control structures. Now this is maybe not the most efficient way of completing this task. And it'd be interesting to see as your JavaScript develops, whether you can improve upon that. And then we had a look at some arithmetic operations, the maths random and the maths floor, for example. So by all means, have a look at those functions in a little bit more detail. So hopefully you followed the code, you understand how this works, and maybe now you can add to it to improve the game.